Hey everyone, Tactics here with my second last title route walkthrough for the first season of The War Within, where this time we've got Ara-Kara City of Echoes. Just like the other videos in this series, I'll be taking you through my advanced route of this dungeon, giving you some tips, tricks, and tech that you can use that will hopefully help you on your journey to the 0.1% title. And for those interested, of course, I've linked the MDT string for this route and the playlist for the rest of this series down in the description below. Now, let's get right into it. Where to start, there's actually a neat little tip for something you can do to help you out before even putting the key in, and that's assuming you have a tailoring member in your group. There's those tailoring buffs kind of spread throughout the dungeon, really. And what you can actually do is you can clear to the one at the bottom of the stairs before putting the key in, and then do your normal key timer and have that player pick up the tailoring buff, which lasts 1 minute and will persist through the key getting put in the dungeon. So we're in the start and our evoker is our tailor, so he's got like 50 seconds left of his tailoring buff, which he's going to use on that first pull. And again, that works as of the recording of this video. Maybe it'll change, but as of right now it does work. And for our first little pull, we are going to shroud past these first like 5 crawlers, these first 2 groups here. They're a little annoying. Most groups don't have a rogue. If you don't have a rogue, you don't have to shroud past this. It just makes it a little less annoying, and we don't need them in terms of count. I'm going to start down here though, grab these crawlers at the bottom, and the rest of the group is going to continue in the shroud as I pick up all these initial mobs. It just helps focus the charges from those guys initially onto me before the rest of the group, specifically like the healer in this case, right? He starts getting charged after this, but initially all those charges are targeting me, which helps a little bit, whereas other times we'll target other people and then get very low going into this pull. But as you can see, we're basically pulling everything up the bridge towards this first mini boss, and this mini boss is going to get that tailoring effect I was talking about from the first or from putting the key in, right? So the one we got before we put the key in. So our evoker is going to use his CC increase from his roar, pressing roar, and then he's going to do the tailoring stun. That's going to stun this guy for the majority of this pull, going to eliminate needing the kick initially as well. And then we have kicks basically on these 2 attendants that are in this pull here. And then the evoker is also going to save his kick specifically for the fear when this guy breaks out. And you can also see we did not commit bloodlust. We did not bloodlust this pull. We are holding lust here. You basically aren't going to get really 4 lust in this dungeon, right? The key timer is 31.5 minutes. You have to literally lust on pull 4 times essentially to get it. You have a minute and a half. And so we basically give up on the 4 lust stream and we commit to 3 lusts. And so that means you basically have 11.5 minutes of leeway to press your bloodlust button. So we are not rushed here to press it. So we're actually going to press it on the first boss. So here you can see the mini boss dies shortly after. He only gets 1 fear cast off, and it doesn't really have a ton in terms of kicks going off. So that makes it a lot more consistent because you don't have 3 mobs now to kick. You only have the 2, and obviously Prod Paladin kind of solo one of them on their own. So moving forward here, Poison Dispel is super valuable in this dungeon, specifically on this next pull, because there's going to be a lot of these engorged crawlers who are the ones that put the poisons out on people. So you're going to see our shaman poison cleansing totem, recall his totem, and then poison cleansing totem again. And then in between that, you've got myself and the evoker as the only other poison spell. So we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting outside of those poison cleansing totem windows. You can see I'm going to go group in this pack here, pull them on top of this caster, and then I'm also going to pull these 3 more engorged crawlers in. So you can see very, very valuable. And this is actually one of those pulls that is somewhat enabled by having poison cleansing totem. It is very, very useful. I'd say if you had another, maybe a 3rd natural poison dispel in place of it, it probably wouldn't be that bad still. But this is a pretty spooky pull. We commit things like barrier to it as well, right, just to get us initially in this pull. There is only the 1 caster, so it's not really like a ton of kicks. It's mostly just that random poison dot going out from the crawlers. And for tanks, you need to be very focused on the bleeds going out from the jabbing flyers. You should always go target the tank unless you don't have initial aggro. And you can see actually something here that happens you may not have. Let me rewind. You can see these mobs coming behind us. Where do these mobs come from? Well, there's actually 3 flyers on this platform that look like they're attached to another pack, but they're not. So you can actually just tag the flyers and get them in, and that is part of the count for this pull. So be aware of that. It's on this platform, this middle platform right behind us here, above these mobs right here. You can just tag the flyers, and they'll come in without the additional engorged crawlers, which is very useful. And then this pull, we finish it off. And once this pull starts getting low, there is another tailoring buff on the first mini boss platform, the one we've already killed. So you're going to see once we start getting these mobs low, our dragon is going to leave. He's going to go get that tailoring buff so that we can use it on the next mini boss. There he goes. And then our priest is just going to life grip him back for a little bit of speed so that you can kind of get a good angle here. Boom, he grabs the tailoring buff. Boom, he gets life gripped across the edge. And then we group up a few more mobs here. This 2 packs, basically, a bunch of crawlers and like 1 engorged guy. And we go straight into the mini boss. And here, there's basically 2 strategies. Generally, I think you should just kind of send that tailoring stun ASAP. Again, a pressing roar, send the tailoring stun. I think it just gets slightly delayed here, so we send it a little late. And the goal would be to send it before that AoE casts. And so basically what would happen is the stun would end, the boss would do a frontal, and then out of that frontal, the boss would immediately AoE. So you have a ton of time to kill the boss before the first AoE even happens. And then otherwise, it's very predictable when you should press your defensives. We just missed it a little bit there. I think the timing is a little odd to get used to. It's one of our earlier Ara-Kara keys, so something to be aware of there. But I recommend sending the stun before the AoE actually goes off. Technically, you could also interrupt it if you're really, really quick, but that timing is rough, and it's not really just super hard. You just press a defensive, and you kind of live that AoE, right? So it's not really required to interrupt it, so I recommend just sending it and then timing your defensives after the frontal. Here, pretty simple pull. This is actually a pretty standard pull. It's just the attendant of 2 crawlers into this mini boss. Not really a ton to talk about here. If you stand behind the boss, you can avoid all the frontals, but the poisons are player baited as well, these poison clouds. So you want to be careful not to fill up this entire area with poison clouds if you can avoid it. Nothing super crazy on this pull. But after these guys die, you're going to see they're going to boss. I'm going to go around. I'm going to pick up a little bit more count, some drabbing flyers here. Again, these 3, I'm just going to pick them up. I'm going to run around this corner. I'm probably going to get life gripped again. Yep. Grab these drabbing flyers. Boom. We've got 6. And we're going to wank our way towards these eggs. These eggs here, because we want to play very, very close to them. This is part of our little strategy for this boss. That is a neat tip that a lot of people don't actually know. And we are, of course, going to have 2-minute CDs here and Bloodlust. This is our Bloodlust, or our third set, rather, of 2-minute CDs, I believe, are going to be used here on this boss on pull with Bloodlust. And so again, we're moving back up very, very close to these eggs. And the strategy here is basically you can watch the boss's hitbox, and if the fixated players don't go inside the boss's hitbox, the boss will not eat them. You can see how close we get. You can get this close to the boss. The boss is not going to eat these crawlers. So basically the whole group just stacks up outside the boss's hitbox. All of the crawlers just stack up, and you get full cleave on the boss while also being able to fully cleave the spiders. It's super, super useful. You do take a bit of melee damage, but this melee damage is actually, it's been toned down a few times now, I believe, on live servers. So it's actually not very scary. And you can use things like AoE stuns on them as well to kind of mitigate that a bit, and they just melt, as you saw there. Obviously, this is in Lust and CDs, so they're going to melt a little bit faster than normal, but you're going to see they're going to die very, very quickly over the course of this boss fight, because all DPS get to do damage to them, and this is a double melee comp, right? So having them super far away is a very large DPS loss, not only for the boss, but also for the ads themselves, because it's just, they're melee, right? They're not going to have uptime. Then we get to the onslaught, where again we are stacked up, and kind of similar to a lot of bosses, we're going to have these swirlies kind of spawn, and we're going to rotate around the boss, right? Similar to the Siege of Borealis second boss, similar to the Cryquake last boss. We stack up, and technically you can put 2 of these in one spot, but when you're 5 stacked, it's actually very dangerous because you're not going to be fully stacked. So we stutter step per spawn. So we stutter step, stutter step, stutter step, and it's really not that important because you save so much space by doing this. It's actually totally fine to stutter step. We look at the next egg spawn, we see it, we're going to move over towards it. And again, we are ready. In terms of the hits that are scary, it is only the alerting shrill. That is what you want to put defensives on. This was a Zephyr. We had Zephyr on this one, but we're going to rotate through Zephyrs, barriers, personals, those things on alerting shrill specifically. As a tank, you can see I am getting owned by this. That is because a lot of the alerting shrills overlap with the tank damage amp. That is very, very scary. Be careful. You are going to take more damage than you expect from this, so just be aware of that. Generally, the Gossamer also deals some damage, but it's way, way, way less than the alerting shrill, so you're not really concerned about defensiving it. Your defensives want to be on the alerting shrill. So again, we're moving over here, and this is just a rinse and repeat from this point out. the fixated people going right behind the mobs, and they're just going to stop right on the boss's hitbox. Easy cleave. You can see it's not doing like a ton of damage, nothing like not healable, and this is without a stun. So that's the maximum amount of damage you're going to take here. They live a little bit longer because we didn't have CDs for that one, but it wasn't unhealable. And we had things like Cap Totem available if we actually needed to do an AoE stun or AoE knockups, that kind of thing. That's all very usable. And so again, moving towards the next eggs, getting in place, boom. And again, we're breathing through the boss there, and these guys melt because we have actual damage for these ones. It's kind of like every other. It seems like we're gonna have damage for versus not have damage for. And you can see the boss is getting very, very low. And then at some point, we basically will, call for, hey, this boss is low enough. We're not killing anything else. And it might actually be this point, yeah, like 20-ish%. We're not killing anything else. You see, we don't go to these eggs. We full stay on the boss, and this evoker is going to send out his root over on those mobs, and we're going to use things like roots, like knockbacks, like slows, and chain that to until the boss is dead. You can probably do that sub 30%, like just given the boss's health at this point, right? As long as you kind of kill it before like the next kind of ad set is out, and going to get too close to the boss, you're kind of fine, right? So lots of time there. And that makes this boss a lot easier. It's a pretty dangerous boss, which is also why we've opted to put the Bloodlust on, and a lot of groups have seemed to have opted to do that as well. And again, for the same Bloodlust reasons, you're not wasting a Bloodlust by doing that, so it's okay to hold it for like 4 or 5 minutes and put it on that boss. Here comes the next pull. We're going to go pretty big off the top here. I'm drinking. Yes, all paladins know we love drinking between pulls. We are going to mind soothe these assistants and avoid them just because they're kind of annoying on the grouping and kind of dangerous, honestly. And there's already going to be 1 to 2 in this pull. We're just running down. We have the one kick that everyone who's not me is going to be kicking, and the second web mage is up there that I'm going to be getting in. I think potentially we have we have a kick in for it, and then we're on top of the stag shell, and basically it's just the evoker's job. He's going to be babysitting the stag shell, making sure it doesn't go off, and he's going to call if he can't babysit one of them, and then we'll throw out like a Hodge or some other CC because we have them available, but basically no one else is going to be looking at them. We're all looking at other things unless he calls for help. Cryo damage, of course, going on the hulking Bloodguard because he has that big DR aura that we don't like. Going to be pulling another assistant in here as things start to die. And just gets keep the target count up, though didn't need to do that. Potentially we could have done that later on. Basically the pull size is so large here anyways that it's and because of the DR, everything is very healthy. It's not a big deal to pull this pack in. We're going to be getting these guys down. I think Rogue's going to be doing a meld shenanigans here, and we're going to be chaining because this is now a good spot. Again, Rogue, stop yelling at me. Look, he melded. Don't yell at me. And there we go. Into this next corner here. We're basically going to be pulling all the trash, and it's kind of a rinse and repeat in this area again, where the evoker is babysitting the stag shell. The evoker is calling if he needs help with a stag shell stop, and the prow damage is always going into the Bloodguard. This is the last Bloodguard we pull. Now, something to note, if you miss the stag shell and it spawns a Bloodguard and runs away, that is count you lost. Missing a single stag shell in this route does mean you are off count, and you will need to pull something extra either earlier on or later on in the dungeon, so be aware of that. The big guy it spawns does not give count. Now we're going to be killing this web mage, of course. Let the rogue re-stealth, pulling in this pack. This is good timing for us because we want the patrol on top of this pack, and this is our last pull. Basically, in this area, we're going to be skipping the last big pack in this area. It's kind of dangerous. We also saw we did sleepwalk this guy a little bit to move him away from this patrol, and we're probably going to throw a mine suit out if I had to guess. Oh no, it goes over there. So with the sleepwalk alone on the stag shell, it pulls it kind of out of range, whereas like it's quite dangerous if you're standing over here and you can easily body pull that pack, but with the sleepwalk, it makes it nice. Only other thing to be aware of is the assistance. As a tank, when you're pulling packs with assistance, make sure one of your first globals, if not your first global, goes into them, because they will extraction strike very quickly. It's kind of like the dashing guys in Dawnbreaker, in the second area of Dawnbreaker as well in the city. If someone else body pulls them, or if the healer gets aggro because you hit another mob first and then these guys got a healer aggro immediately, it's going to instantly tank buster them. So be very, very careful, tanks, when you're pulling these, and other people as well. Don't body pull these packs. You will be in trouble. So here, we don't need the Shroud. I think we just do it because it's kind of a bad pat in terms of where we are. But Shroud's not needed. Mind Soothe isn't even needed. You can walk past it if it's in a good spot. I'm going to add these Blood Workers over here onto this pack while everyone else is dealing with the pack itself. And on this one, I think there's much more of a group effort to actually stop these guys because the Evoker doesn't have too many options at this point. So we're killing this pack, and then we're going straight into the boss. How do we do that? Well, there's a few ways. We are going to use not time spiral, the one that increases your healer range, basically. And he's going to, use that time dilation. No, something like that. One of those timey-wimey ones. You guys know what I'm talking about. Evoker talent, and he's going to buff the healer. Healer's going to hit the boss. I'm going to taunt the boss as soon as it's here, and we're all going to get ported into the arena. So the only thing you need to be careful of is if the boss turns with the first frontal. Here he casted it early, but sometimes he casts it after everyone ports in, and so you need to dodge that. The other way to do this is you can walk down and you can just evoke or rescue someone over, or you can like heroic leap over the edge on the stairs in front of the pack, not pulling the pack, of course. And then whoever gets over, basically, they can tag the boss in the boss room, and that again will grip everyone into the actual room. Just make sure you don't get killed by a boss melee, because the advantage of being from up here is the boss is not going to melee the priest. I'm going to get into taunt range before that can happen, and we're also not in range to be meleeed. Excuse me. Now we get to this boss, and excuse me, the main thing on this boss is these charges. It's very easy to get one shot by these charges. You see what they call for a sack on this first one, so I sack the priest there. Specifically, priest in our comp, it's going to prioritize range players, right? So it's priest and our evoker. The evoker is able to dash out of the charge. Once the charge is in motion, it locks into position, so you can avoid it. Don't move too early, otherwise it spins the charge. You have to move once the charge is in motion. But the priest has issues with that, right? Maybe a rescue could get him out of that, but otherwise, basically, he's going to press defensives for those charges so that he can actually survive them. And the other thing, too, is you don't want to necessarily go to some of the edges, because there's been a bit of a bug we noticed where this attack can double hit you if you're on the edges of the room or too far on the edges of the room. So just be aware of that. And if you have speed, right, if you have a dash ability, use that to avoid this second major hit. But again, that's kind of dependent on your class. So now we're going to be just kind of bringing the web mage on top and do my best to point this guy away from my group. And then we're getting into the actual intermission phase, and it's quite simple, basically. If you have infestation, you want to drop it off on the right side of the circle facing the boss. The tank is going to be on the right side of the circle facing the boss, and generally you can see the rest of the group is going to move towards the left side here. Again, you see the shaman staying on the right side to drop his infestation, then he moves to the left, and all the frontals are going to be baited right on the left side of this area. And you can see as a tank here, it's not a big deal if you dip for a couple seconds into one of these circles, or if you dip for a couple seconds into the area outside of the safety circle. That's when you would press a defensive, because there's really not a lot of tank damage outside of that. The other thing, very interesting actually, which a lot of people don't realize, the infestation debuff rotates around your entire group, usually starting with your tank on pull. So the first person is always your tank, and then it'll rotate one by one by one. The obviously only thing that'll stop this is a player death, but if your whole team is alive, it rotates through your tank, player 2, player 3, player 4, player 5. Then it goes back to your tank and goes in the exact same order. So you know exactly who is being hit by the next infestation once you get to like the fourth person in the order, right? You know exactly the order, and you can pre-defensive these infestations, because of course they do tick quite hard. So that is a neat little advantage. Also lets your healer know, hey, who is going to be taking damage. Obviously, again, the first part of that rotation is not accurate, but after that fourth person gets picked, you now know exactly who is getting picked by that infestation. Something a lot of people don't realize is it works that way, but now you know. So it's a neat little tip there for, being able to defensive or just at least focus heal. And from here, the fight just kind of repeats, right? We're bringing that frontal out. I think he's going to go out far enough and just going to dodge, takes no damage. Evoker privilege there. And then just kind of rinse and repeat. So not too much to talk about for this boss here anymore. There is another tailoring buff here, by the way. Like, I'm not going to see it. It's in that hut, basically, that we just passed. There's not really a ton of great targets. I think our Evoker, yeah, he you can see on the mini map, he is taking it. I think he just uses it on this Blood Overseer in this first pull. The one thing you can do is if you are pulling down mid, you can use it on this guy to reset his stacks, which is quite useful, because it basically means like you can take him up to 3 stacks, maybe 4 stacks if you can live it, stun him to drop his stacks to 0, and then take him back up to 3 stacks and hopefully kill him. That is a fine strat. I've seen it done in like 16s if you want to go down the middle, specifically, especially if you're a tank spec that has trouble with the slows. But I think a lot of people are playing paladin or warrior at this point, and they don't have trouble. But you know, guardian druids really struggle with going down these sides. So potentially, if you're a guardian druid comp, it could be better to go down the middle and make use of that, at least all the way up to 16s. But you know, on the highest keys, this guy is kind of an extreme danger, and you won't be able to kill him in time. So that's why a lot of people have opted more for a route that we're going to do. So again, on this first pull, we got the one overseer. Going to grab a few drones, the two on each side, and we're going to grab the patrol here. This patrol is very, very dangerous. The two sets of them. So you need to be very careful. Two things. One, immediately upon pulling them, make sure everyone enters combat. Because basically, especially if you're pulling this like mid pull, which is like kind of unavoidable, right? You're going to be in combat. The healer is going to get in combat with them like ASAP. And we've noticed if the DPS don't immediately get in combat with them, all of them just charge the healer and the healer dies, right? So you want to make sure you get in combat with them ASAP, everyone in the group. And we throw down the barrier here as well to help mitigate that first charge. And it's going to go in. Everyone's been hit. So there we go. We spread out those charges nicely. So danger is averted, crisis averted rather. And then we've got the webs where I'm going to alternate through freedom and bubble. I think freedom can actually get the first two. By the way, all you would need to do is you just need to pre-freedom a little bit. Obviously, this guy's stunned at this point, but like you can see here when he's not stunned, like he's like 6 seconds out of the cast here, 5 seconds out. And if you're not stunning them, you could freedom yourself at this point, and it would last through the start of the cast, and then you could cast it again during the cast of the next one. I don't do that here because I basically just go freedom, bubble, freedom, and they're dead. So at this key level, it's not needed, but on a bit of a higher key level where you potentially need to survive like 4 casts of the webbing, that's something you can do. And again, just cleaving this down. And then we go into our next pull here, where we're going to pull the next set of the patrol. Again, this is my bubble. And then we're going to pull 2 packs from the right side as well. So let's see here. Basically, I'm going to pack this. I'm going to get this side. Boom. I can hit with my shield. And we have a ranged person go tag those the 3 guys in the corner there. And I'm looking around for the next patrol. It's in a bad patrol. So I opt to add these 2 drones here as well. This is not in the route. These guys are in the next pull in the route. I just add them because we're going to be hitting mobs for a little bit. And I don't want to just hit nothing. So we do that. And it's also, it adds quite a bit more tank damage into this pull. So it's something to be aware of. But, you know, I had, you know, basically the majority of my stuff available for this, so I wasn't really super worried. And then I just back up and make sure I grab these carriers, where again, you want to make sure everyone is in combat. I did not have Avenger Shield for the pull of those guys, which is why they go a little bit all over the place, but it's, you know, not the end of the world. We group them up, get in combat, and now we're kind of cleaving everything down here. And now we're going to go down the left side. So again, usually there would be 2 mobs here, which we wouldn't have pulled into this pack. You're going to tag them, make sure you hit them to drop their puddle and avoid their puddle, and you just go down into this area here, and you've got the 2 overseers. Just put a kick on each of the overseers. And again, it's the same deal for a paladin. It's quite easy. Freedom, bubble, freedom. And if there's another one, you can do the double freedom tech that I was talking about. You also have things like Priest Grip and Evoker Rescue that you can use depending on your comp, right? You also have things like the Totem from the Shaman. A neat little tip there. You can run Jetstream Totem on the Shaman, and Jetstream will clear this snare. So that's useful when, again, that's one of the bigger things for Guardian Druid. You can use Jetstream Totem. Super, super useful. Warriors have a couple ways to clear it as well. Obviously, they have Leap. They have Intervene to a target, assuming the target's in a safe spot. And they also have Avatar, which will clear these snares as well. So, you know, those are 2 most popular tanks, so that's why I'm going over them specifically. But, yeah, generally, it's pretty easy, probably the easiest for Paladin specifically to deal with these pulls, which is why you're seeing a lot of the groups opt to do this stuff instead of the more dangerous pull in the center, which is also just a single target versus more AoE stuff, right? So this is our count. And count's very important. So let's sort of rewind, check count. Basically, I think it's like 37. Yeah, you need at least 37% after this first boss area to be on count for this route. If you aren't at 37%, you missed one of the like several groups of small flyers that I was talking about, right? That we add in to make sure we hit count. Again, pulling the guys in the first pull will add a little bit of count as well, which can be useful. But again, it makes that pull a little bit more dangerous, at least on the initial grouping. And I think it's like 72. Yeah, it's like 72.5. If you're at 72.5 at the second boss, you're clean. Also, actually, in terms of bloodlust, I believe we lusted this. No, we didn't. We're too fast. Our second lust would have been here with cooldowns if we were a little slower, but we are kind of blazing, so we end up holding lust for the last boss. But those would be your 3 lusts. It's first, second, and third boss. Let's move back now to the third boss, which is where we held our boss because we are going insanely fast in this key. And to be fair, it is one of the easier keys, I think, this season, at least for the high key stuff. So kind of makes a lot of sense. Probably going to need to get this key done on like a 16 if I had to guess for title. So boom, we're going to last boss. We got 2 minutes. We got Lust. We are tanking somewhat towards the center of the arena. And the first set of blood workers is always the hardest. So you want to try, and if you have the ability to, immune things or not get hit by this first set, and not need a puddle, it's useful to do it on this first set. Otherwise, just try and clear as many of these blood workers as you can. It can be useful to ping which one you're going to take, or just pre-position, especially as range. Pre-positioning next to your puddle is very useful because melee can kind of preemptively see, okay, that puddle's taken, I'm going to go over here, right? So again, we're breaking all these guys out. I don't have bubble available because I used it on the previous pull, so I'm not going to get the bubble this. You can see we are dispelling basically the 2 range get dispelled. We have 2 poison dispels, so the dragon dispels himself, I dispel the priest, and melee are just going to kind of make a little bit of a formation. You can see here he's shifting up to not murder each other. That's it. There's only 2 potential directions on this boss fight for the waves, so for people that aren't aware, they can only go in this direction here, diagonally basically on the platform, or the other diagonal on the platform. Those are the only directions. It's like, I think it's literally, is it north, south, east, west? I think those, yeah, I think it is, according to the mini map. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think these are the only 2 potential directions. So you can also kind of pre-stand in melee if you spread around in like a triangle almost. You can kind of make it so that you would never hit anyone with your pattern. And then range, just need to make sure that they're off, slightly diagonal there, so that we can do that instant dispel and not really be worried. Again, pre-positioning. Everyone's moving out. Break your things and kind of repeat here. And again, we're going to be clearing other people, got the poisons going out, and watch the priest, boom, instant dispel, and we just line up in a way that's not going to murder our friends. It all expires. Because this is going out, because melee is kind of holding these every single time, obviously that's when damage is the scariest, so melee, be aware, and anyone really holding that debuff, it's kind of dependent on the number of poison dispels you have. And if you had an additional poison dispel and you were going to be dispelling a melee player, just be very careful when you dispel it and make sure they know that they're the one being dispelled. So going out again, I'm bubbling this one. I think we're probably going to move back towards the middle here. Rogue cloak as well. The other thing that can be useful here is, depending on your comp, you can save someone. In terms of how the suck actually works, basically what it is, it's a pull in, it gradually increases, and then just before the end, it does like a death grip effect on people. After that death grip effect, that is when you would use a blink, a disengage, a port, a heroic leap, anything like that after the death grip effect. Just before, it's like in the last like second of the cast, and that's when you would use your big movement ability essentially to avoid getting hit by that cosmic singularity. And that is very consistent. I do it on my warrior like every single time with heroic leap. You can do it with, like I said, mage. Rogue can shadow step someone. Lots of classes can do it. Obviously, DKs can just death advance it, and that saves the amount of puddles you actually need to play with, or you need to have of it in a playable area, rather. But otherwise, again, this boss is just kind of rinse and repeat. Make sure you have enough puddles available. Make sure people are kind of in the right spot, and make sure you have defensives and healing on the melee stack. As you hear, we throw the barrier down even for the melee stack to kind of chill in, because we know all of melee is going to be having these dots. We're going to be dispelling the range. So neat little tip there. That really helps. You can life grip. Boom, there it is. There's the life grip to help someone out. You can evoke a rescue as well to help someone out. That also works, again, after that initial kind of death grip effect. But there we have it, guys. Hopefully this video helps you out, and if it did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it, including plenty of dungeon and raid guides coming in Season 2 and beyond. Of course, I need to shout out my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make content like this possible, and I'll see everyone in the next video.